How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to 2A News Now. And as always here at 2A News Now, you get your Second Amendment news, straightforward and to the point with no BS added in. We all know that Congress makes laws, but somehow the ATF makes these rules that somehow have the weight of laws. And have you guys ever wondered who makes up these rules at the ATF? And of course, the ones that were made during the Biden administration made millions of law-abiding citizens criminals. But what if I told you there's been a person working at the ATF not for 10 years, not for 20 years, not for 30 years, but for over 40 years, who has had his hands in everything from Fast and Furious, and to as recently as the rules on pistol braces, as well as ghost guns, and the zero tolerance rules that closed down hundreds of FFLs around the country. And now we found out this person exists. And from what I could find out, even though the Trump administration has taken over, this guy is still working for the ATF. Let's take a closer look who this guy is. And I would call him enemy number one at the ATF, that they need to get rid of as soon as possible. And who is this guy I'm talking about? His name is Jeffrey Cohen. He has been part of the ATF since 1985. He started out as Associate Chief Counsel, and then later on he became the Northeast Division's top legal advisor. Cohen was basically the ATF's legal opinion, and also basically he was the authority for the ATF. And they say he knew the rules better than the ATF agents themselves. They said he went over every warrant before it was signed, and he went over every policy that went into action for the ATF. Let's go all the way back to Fast and Furious. Fast and Furious was too big of an operation for Cohen not to know what was happening. And it had to get legal clearance from someone. Most likely it was Cohen. He might not have made up this plan, but he definitely had to know about it and give his approval. When it came to other trafficking cases, he always gave his advice. I mentioned this was a big operation, and you ask how big was it? The ATF allowed almost 2,000 firearms fall in the hands of cartels. The guns were supposed to be traced, but they weren't. And get this, after all of this happened, no arrests were made. And I mentioned the Border Patrol agent that was killed. That happened in December of 2010. His name was Brian Terry. And two of those firearms that were allowed to go to the cartels were found near the scene where the Border Patrol agent was killed. And thankfully in 2011, they stopped this operation from continuing. And once all of this became public, the Department of Justice said they didn't knowingly let the cartels get these firearms. But then they took that statement back. And then people started resigning. And even the acting ATF director at that time resigned as well. And then Congress demanded answers. The ATF said the Fast and Furious operation would help them get the higher-ups in the cartels and hopefully dismantle them. But instead, they armed them. And not only did those two firearms show up at the scene where the Border Patrol agent was killed, but also other crime scenes all over Mexico. They were used in cartel executions and also used to kill Mexican citizens. And Congress did try to get answers, but a lot of the reports that were given to Congress were classified, and most of it was redacted, or the Justice Department refused to turn it over. And I still remember watching this on TV when then U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder testified before Congress. And he said there was no cover-up whatsoever and refused to release all the reports that Congress wanted. And then the almighty President Obama invoked executive privilege. So one question is, since Jeffrey Cohen has been in this position for 40 years, of course he's had his hand in approving other operations like Fast and Furious, but not to the extent that it was. And since the ATF and the Department of Justice is known for covering things up, how many more firearms have gone to the cartel because of the ATF? How much cocaine and fentanyl was allowed to come up to the United States? So since Jeffrey Cohen has been in this position for over 40 years, he's had his hands either directly or indirectly on every new gun law that has passed and every new rule the ATF has made, and has spent decades doing this. He was one of the ones that worked on revoking FFLs for what they call willful violations. And Cohen was the one who helped define that standard. he turned those ATF policies into his own personal weapon to destroy the Second Amendment. He knew how to go after those small businesses, those small mom and pop gun shops. He knew how to go after the law-abiding citizens. Jeffrey Cohen was involved in revoking FFLs and taking away their assets. And he actually wrote the strategy on how to get FFLs to go out of business. Jeffrey Cohen used his knowledge of the law to target FFLs for minor clerical errors on the 4473 forms, so they could either assess fines to the FFLs or revoke their licenses. One of the biggest things Jeffrey Cohen worked on was what they called policy development, and he did handle litigation. He helped agents justify raids, and Jeffrey Cohen turned a constitutional right into a privilege. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, Jeffrey Cohen had his hand in redefining the ATF rules having to do with pistol braces and ghost guns. And of course, by design, these reinterpretations of the rules made these firearms that were previously legal and made them illegal. And the one thing that really pissed everybody off was the pistol brace ban. And then them now saying pistols with stabilizing braces are considered short-barreled rifles. And overnight, that made millions of people become felons. People purchased the pistol braces legally, and they were legal to have on their firearm. And then just snap, just like that, they're illegal. It's just ridiculous. They can make a rule, not a law, that one day something's legal, and then the next day it's illegal. And basically, for 40 years, Jeffrey Cohen has waged a war on our Second Amendment rights. And gun control wasn't happening in Congress, but gun control was happening, and it was coming from the ATF in form of their rules. And what Jeffrey Cohen did was manipulate the law and made our constitutional right to keep and bear arms a crime. Like I said, he was involved in everything from Fast and Furious all the way up to now. And like I showed you earlier in the video, his LinkedIn page says he still works for the ATF. But also when going through the information about this, I saw one story saying that he's not working for the ATF anymore. So I don't know which one is true. But I can guarantee you, now that we know the name Jeffrey Cohen, he will go down in history as the most hated man at the ATF. Most people want to blame the president at the time when these new ATF rules come about. Or of course they're going to blame the director of the ATF. A lot of people went after Stephen Dettelbach, and rightfully so. But now that we have a picture of this guy, and we have the name Jeffrey Cohen, he is the most hated man in the ATF. And if he's still there, he needs to be fired immediately. And he should be investigated to find out what his role was in Fast and Furious. And if there's even more of a body count, and how many more guns were sent down to Mexico. How much more drugs were brought in to the United States. I know this was a lot of information and the video is long, but let me know what you guys think in the comments section. And I really do enjoy making these videos for you guys. And I hope in return you guys continue to help me out by liking, sharing, and subscribing, and hitting those post notifications after you watch every video. And I really do appreciate it. And I invite all of you to come back and watch my next video.